Hey, everybody, welcome in. It is a Tuesday edition of the Houtopia Football Podcast. I'm Sean Pendergast, one half of Payne and Pendergast, Sports Radio 610, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. weekdays. And you can find us both on the radio and on the Odyssey app. Appreciate everybody. And on YouTube and Twitch. I should mention that also. You can watch us do the show. Some of you are watching me do this show right now on YouTube. You can either listen to us on the Odyssey app, or if you want to watch Seth and I do our thing, or the entire station for that matter, YouTube and Twitch, Sports Radio 610. Appreciate you tuning in. I just got back. I'm drenched in sweat from OTAs over at NRG Stadium. The Texans with their second OTA session today. They'll have another one later this week, 3 more next week. The media will get to see the Thursday one next week. And then it'll be mandatory minicamp after that. So we'll get into some OTA observations, including who was there, who wasn't there, and just get you up to speed. They did a ton of 7-on-7, a ton of 11-on-11. I say a ton. The session was only about an hour and 15 minutes. But it was largely team offense versus defense work, some special teams mixed in, a little bit of individual drills. Admittedly, I got there a little late. It started at 9:45. I got there about 10 after 10 because I had to finish up my radio show. But I was there long enough to make some observations on OTAs for the Texans. So we'll get into that. We've got a mailbag as well. Got a bunch of questions about the schedule in the mailbag, as well as some other things that we will get in. A reminder on a few things here administratively off the top, to hit that subscribe button right now. If you've been listening to this podcast, but you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button. You'll get this podcast wherever it is you listen to your podcast. And while you're at it, give us a rating, give us a review. That always helps as well. The podcast continues to grow as I close up my email here so we don't hear any more dings when I get emails during the podcast. So there's that. Speaking of the mailbag, if you didn't get a question in this week, but you want to get one in next week, love hearing from Texan fans, certainly all over Houston. But, man, we get emails from everywhere. I'm really happy that the podcast serves as part of the conduit for you out-of-towners or even out-of-countryers. You know, we get emails from Asia, from Africa, from England, and, all places in Europe. Certainly, we've got some Canadian fans as well. So, and Mexico. So, the really good way to keep in touch with the show is houmailbag@gmail.com. Love the feedback. Love the questions. We're heading into that time of year where the mailbag becomes more and more crucial. This is going to be really exciting. That was probably as we get into some OTA observations with the Texans. My prevailing one, I'll give you individual observations in a second. There's just an excitement and a buzz, even with just media members out there. Man, we are so excited for this team, and it's so different now. This was our first practice session that we've been to where the rookies, who we got to see about 10 days ago, are mixed in with the vets. It was just cool to see CJ Stroud out there doing his thing. It was cool to see all the guys out there that were there doing their thing. So I guess let's start there with who wasn't there. Stephon Diggs was not at OTAs today. Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard, Shaq Mason, all not there today. And Danico Autry and Danielle Hunter also not there as well. Now, from what I understand in talking to some folks, Danielle Hunter and Danico Autry have been around the building, and they aren't like just hardcore. We're working out somewhere else and getting our work in out there. So it may very well be that Danico Autry and Danielle Hunter are participating in OTAs, but today was not a day they participated. Maybe a vet day off, that kind of thing. Bottom line is I have zero concern really about any of these 6 guys. Of the ones that I feel like should be there, probably the biggest one would be Stephon Diggs, just to begin building chemistry with CJ Stroud. Is it a big red flag and all of a sudden my prediction goes from 11 wins to 9 wins because of this? No. But it's preferable that all those guys would be there. Titus, I would have liked to have seen there just to see what they would have had him doing and how he would have looked physically doing football things. If you recall, Titus played in the J.J. Watt charity softball game a few weeks ago, and I thought he was moving around pretty good out there, actually. So I'm excited about Titus. But the upside is that with Laramie Titus and Shaq Mason not there, there are a lot of other guys who are getting work, albeit non-padded work, but getting at least the mental reps and physical, and however physical you can be at OTAs without pads on. they're getting those reps. Other guys, backups are getting those reps, a tackle. So Blake Fisher is getting some really good work in at right tackle. Left tackle was, I think, I can't remember if it was Sharp or if it was somebody else, but and Charlie Heck is still on this team too. These guys are getting more reps because Laramie Titus and then Shaq at right guard obviously is not there. So I don't think it's a big deal. But that's who's missing. That's a question I get asked quite a bit actually about OTAs is who's there and who's not there. So there's your attendance. As far as guys who were there go, probably the biggest story from OTAs today is that Tank Dell was practicing. Now he was practicing and working during 7-on-7. He was not, while I was there, working in the 11-on-11 drills. But he was participating in practice. He was running routes. He was moving like Tank Dell. I never would guess that this is a person who had a gunshot wound 3 weeks ago. But he looks like Tank. So this is huge news for the Texans. I don't want to say they dodged a bullet. That's a bad pun. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Texans and Tank obviously got very lucky with this whole situation. The reports are that Tank, the bullet went through the back of his leg and out through the front of his leg. And that it did require surgery. I'm guessing that was just suturing up a wound. Because again, this was mere days ago and Tank Dell is out there looking phenomenal. And if you've seen the videos that Tank has posted with his private coach, Delfonte Diamond, he's looked great in those videos too. So that's phenomenal news. That's the best news I could give you from OTAs. The other bit of good news I can give you is that Kenyon Green, who missed all of last season with injuries, various injuries, really just to kind of get his body cleaned up from head to toe and kind of take a red shirt year, he looks to be in phenomenal shape. This is what I was hoping Kenyon Green would look like coming off of his rookie year, where he came in, he was drafted, he was banged up, he got concussed during the season, but he came in kind of soft and doughy and big, looked like a big kid. And then I was hoping he would come in last season looking like he does now. He didn't. He came in looking the same as he did his rookie year. And I think we now know why. He was dealing with multiple injuries. By the end of training camp, he was done for the season because of, I guess, a shoulder or an arm injury, something. Kenyon Green looks good. He looks to be in really good shape. Now, how well can he play guard at this point? We'll find out when they put the pads on, but he was moving around, man. Like he looks like he took this red shirt year very, very seriously. This is great news. He was the 15th overall pick. He was one of those picks they got for the most part from the Deshaun Watson trade. I mean, the 13th pick and they moved back 2 spots. It's basically a pick from the Deshaun Watson trade. Man, if Kenyon Green turns into something, that's found money in my opinion, because after the 2 seasons he had coming into the league where he played poorly his rookie year, was banged up, and then he just missed all of last season injured. In my mind, I've written him off. I hope I'm wrong. So good job, Kenyon Green. So far, so good. He's wearing number 76 now too, which I think just is a better looking O-line number than 59. I think that helps, but he looks like a different human being. Other small observations, Dameon Pierce looks to be the clear number 2 running back. He was taking some reps with CJ Stroud out there, but Joe Mixon is here. He's in camp, or he's at OTAs. Joe Mixon, holy shit. Joe Mixon, he looks like a beast. He looks like he's 6'1", 220. Like he looks it, man. Dameon does not look like he's put any weight back on. Little disappointing just in terms of the physicality part of it, because Dameon didn't look to be the same runner last year that he was his rookie year in terms of the physicality. He looked like he trimmed down a little bit. Who knows? Maybe some of the not looking as physical had to do with the mental strain of wrapping his brain around the offense, which he admittedly told me and Clint Stoerner late in the season he was having trouble doing. But my big takeaway is they are counting on Dameon Pierce this year. He's running number 2s, right? He's running right behind Joe Mixon right now, at least in terms of the usage today in 7-on-7 and 11-on-11. So they are counting on Pierce to make a redemption tour this year. Obviously, Mixon's the guy they're counting on as the frontline guy, but man, if they can get Dameon Pierce to run like he did 2 years ago, that's found money too. Like Kenyon Green found money, Dameon Pierce found money. John Mechie's another one who CJ Stroud had said in workouts that CJ was organizing that looked really good. I didn't get to see enough of Mechie today to know if that matches up. I will say the one chance Mechie had to kind of make a play, like not just a routine catch, but make a play, was on a deep ball from CJ where Mechie had beaten either CJ Henderson, it might have been Okuda, one of the two former first rounders that they have at corner. He had beaten him deep and was in the back corner of the end zone, and CJ threw it over either over the wrong shoulder or over the opposite shoulder of what Mechie was expecting. And Mechie kind of turned his body, had a chance to make a play, and didn't make the play. So TBD on John Mechie. But those are my main observations. Derek Stingley Jr. had a really nice interception of CJ Stroud on a ball that CJ maybe sailed a little bit towards the sideline from the far hash. And Stingley made a phenomenal play on it to make a catch and stay in bounds. Stingley looks really, really good. And the defense all ran down and did their celebration and organized the big celebration and whatnot. So that was cool. They were having fun out there, man. This is going to be a really exciting team. This is going to be a really exciting season. The schedule is obviously brutal, but they built a team that can take on a brutal schedule. Whatever improvement there was in the schedule hopefully has been matched by the improvement that Nick Caserio has made to the roster, bringing in Diggs to help the receiving core and open up more space for Tank Dell, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, Joe Mixon, a clear upgrade over Devin Singletary at running back, health along the offensive line, and then the pickups on defense with Azeez Al-Shire and Danico Autry and Daniil Hunter. Those are three big-time pickups in the front seven. So hopefully the improvement there in personnel exceeds the increase in the difficulty level of the schedule. Hope I'm putting that right. But good to be back out at OTAs. Good to see everybody blended together, the veterans and the rookies. All right, let's get into the mailbag. Again, if you want to get an email in here, houmailbag@gmail.com, houmailbag@gmail.com. As we get into things, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and leave the houmailbag@gmail.com in case you guys are listening to these questions and you want to get an email in. It's right there at the bottom of the screen if you're watching on our YouTube feed. And if you're just listening, again, houmailbag@gmail.com. Let's start with my guy, BK. Sean, I'm not sure that the schedule release that the NFL is set to release fits into my schedule. How can the league not schedule a schedule release? It isn't any suspense. They aren't making any money off this thing. I would normally have a longer email with a metaphor or theme flowing throughout, jokes and hot takes, but I just don't have time to schedule it. Seriously, how does this happen? That's from BK. BK continues to take the most time and thought and energy into putting his emails together. And BK, I appreciate that. I think the overall thing of what he's saying, let me take a swig of my, let me schedule a swig of my sparkling water there. By the way, the new Waterloo tropical punch flavored sparkling water, thumbs up. That's not an endorsement. I mean, it is an endorsement, but that's not a paid one. Man, Waterloo's got it going on in the sparkling water realm. I think what BK is saying there is why is it that every year the schedule release is something that is so loosely planned? And I have the same question. Man. Like it's not like a hard and fast date on the calendar for the NFL. And this is a league that puts out emails months in advance on key dates during the NFL calendar. You know, the league year starts on March the 15th, the business year, and then legal tampering begins at 11 a.m. on that date, and then free agents can sign this date. They got all the dates where franchise tag guys can sign their deal by July 15th. This is a league that meticulously plans out the entire 365-day calendar, and the schedule release is this thing that gets planned like a happy hour at work like 3 days before, like or not even. I think they gave us like 6 days notice on this one. I don't know why that is. And I'm with you. And if I don't know if their plan is to like do an unveiling of the schedule. I understand like letting a few special games trickle out, letting your network partners leak a game out, but clearly they do a horrible job, and it's getting worse and worse, of keeping the schedule any sort of secret. Every year I hope to like sit down in front of the TV and watch the Texans schedule kind of get unveiled in some way. And it's never that way. Like this year, 13 of the 17 games I had by 4:00 that afternoon. So I'm just kind of getting used to it now, BK, but I'm surprised too. I'm surprised. This is something that I think it feels like it's gotten more and more attention through the years. It certainly feels more acute here in Houston with the schedule being so important this year and being so much more fun this year than in previous seasons when it's been all noon Sunday kickoffs. So yeah, I don't have an answer for that, but I'm with you. I think the league would, it's hard to tell the NFL they're doing things wrong. They're just such a money making machine right now. But as a consumer, I wish the schedule release was something that was more planned out, where the date was kind of set in stone a little bit earlier, and where there weren't nearly as many leaks as there are. I don't like the leaks. I know a lot of people do. I don't. All right, Lorenzo emails in. Hey, Sean, first off, want to say I still miss hearing McLean, but you're killing it, and I enjoy hearing you on the podcast, so keep up the good work. Lorenzo, I will. Lorenzo continues. I wanted to ask you if you feel as I do, if it was a missed opportunity scheduling the Reppin H-Town game with Buffalo. I know they're a good team. Let me just stop right there. Yeah, for those who didn't hear, the Buffalo game is the first game where the Texans are going to be wearing the Color Rush dark blue uniforms with the H-Town blue, the light blue trim around the red numbers with the light blue H on the side of the helmet. It's a badass uniform. It is really cool. Lorenzo says, I know that the Bills are a good team on paper. They're just in a rivalry there, and I'd have loved to have repped H-Town against the old Houston team that has that stank-ass owner. Good use of the phrase stank-ass, Lorenzo. Honestly, this is Lorenzo talking now. I know this will never happen. I wish we'd use that uniform exclusively against the Titans when we play them at home. That would really get under their skin. And plus, I'd love for Hannah to have more ammunition to talk trash about them as well. That was pretty sweet to hear. Also want to point out Texans went from 0 primetime games to 6 this year. What a difference a year makes. God damn, it's going to be an exciting year no matter what happens. Love the show. Keep it coming. And I hope to hear my email read on the podcast. Go Texans. Lorenzo, your wish is my command. Your email has been read on the podcast. As far as your thoughts go, the Battle Red game, I forget which game Battle Red is. It's I can't remember if it's the Colts. It's the Detroit game on Sunday night. Because I just remembered how badass those two uniforms are going to look on the field together. Detroit's got one of the best uniforms in football. Their franchise, for most of its history, has stunk. They're good now, but that's a badass uniform, whether it's retro, like just that silver and blue and white color combo is just so clean. And I love the Battle Red for the Texans. The Color Rush or the Rep and H-Town game is the Bills game in week 5, as Lorenzo points out. They still have one more game that they can use an alternate uniform. They're allowed to do it 3 times. So they'll do it one more time. I'm 1,000% sure. Those are the 2 most popular uniforms. So who knows? Maybe stank-ass owner of Tennessee gets her comeuppance. The one thing I will say is I don't think that Hannah is going to let what laundry the Texans are wearing affect her trash talk game. I think Hannah is going to be Hannah, and I don't think it matters what uniform the Texans are wearing. She ain't going to dial it back, man. The queen ain't going to dial it back. Our queen chooses violence, okay? Our queen chooses violence. That's why we love her. All right. Lorenzo, appreciate it. Don't be a stranger. Feel free to email again. Cody from McMahon. Where is McMahon, by the way? Is that in Texas somewhere? Does McMahon want to change their name after Vince McMahon got accused of all those things? Like, is that what happens? Like, Vince McMahon was accused of some horrible, horrible shit. Like, is it like there's that play-by-play guy for Baltimore whose name is Jerry Sandusky? I feel so bad for that guy. Ever since Penn State, Jerry Sandusky polluted that name with his, with skeeve. Like, I don't, there's not a word to describe. And Jerry Sandusky, the Baltimore play-by-play guy, has kept he still goes by Jerry Sandusky. I kind of respect it. Does the town of McMahon want to change its name after Vince McMahon was accused of some really awful, awful shit? Anyways, Cody, you can email me and let me know. But here's Cody's email. It looks as if the NFL is really working hard to market and schedule games by giving fans a game to watch almost every day of the week, except for Tuesdays. The Texans play 3 games inside a 10-day window. Technically, it's an 11-day window, but we get your point. The past season, the NFL applied a flex schedule for games that were meaningful at the end of the season. As we review this year's schedule, is flex game scheduling still a possibility? Could we still see games moving days and slots at the end of the season? Could the Texans still see more moves as the season rolls on? That's from Cody. If your question is, are we going to see games flexed overall? For sure. We do every year. As far as the Texans go, it's hard to really in the second flexing is something that's done way more in the second half of the season. And the Texans' second half of the season is already a majority of games you would flex something into, right? They're 7 of their first 8 games are noon kickoffs. That's typically not a time of the season where a lot of flexing goes on. Now, I could see maybe like by the middle of the season, hell, who knows? Maybe like by week 5, maybe that Buffalo game that we were just talking about, it's a noon kick right now. Maybe that gets flipped to the late afternoon window. I don't think it's going to get moved to Sunday night. But here's the everybody thinks the primetime spots are the primo spots in the eyes of all the networks and the league. The most watched time slot for NFL football is the late window on Sundays every week. Whatever the premier main event game is at 3:25 Houston time, either on Fox or CBS, that's the most watched game every week for the most part. You know, unless there's something different going on, but that's the primo spot. So, so there's 2 things going on here with the Texans. One, I doubt we see them get flexed into prime time because the primetime flexes really are a second half of the season thing. And starting in week 9, the Texans are already playing Thursday night against the Jets, and then week 10 against the Lions here on Sunday night, and then the following week, Monday night at Dallas. They have 3 primetime games in a row, weeks 9 through 11. And then in week 16, they play a noon game at Kansas City on a national stage. That's a Saturday the 21st, and then they play Christmas Day, which obviously they have the world to themselves in the late window on Christmas Day, that 3:30 window. So they're already playing 5 games that are, quote, national games the second half of the season. So I can't imagine them getting a game flex. Now, the other variable is that the week 18 game, nobody has that scheduled yet. We all know who the opponent's going to be, but they wait to schedule week 18 when they see how the playoff situations are playing out. That's why the Texans played Saturday night, week 18 last year, because they were essentially playing the Colts for the rights to get into the postseason. So we don't know what week 18 is going to look like. The Texans are set to play at Tennessee. I doubt that's going to be a game where both teams have ramifications for the postseason, because I just don't think Tennessee is going to be very good. But if I had to guess, Cody, I think the only thing we could see with the Texans' schedule changing from what we've been handed so far would be a noon kick getting pushed into the late window. You know, the noon kicks that they have in the second half of the season is week 12. This is all off the top of my head. So week 12, they play Tennessee at home. I think that'll stay noon. The week 13 game against Jacksonville is interesting. That's in Jacksonville. The Texans have a bye the next week. Now, that's a game that, you know, if Jacksonville and the Texans are both duking it out in the AFC South, they played in week 12 last year, and that was one of the more important week 12 games. And that was the game after which everybody was talking about this rivalry between CJ Stroud and Trevor Lawrence and how we're going to get that for years to come. And then CJ finished strong and Trevor Lawrence didn't. But I can see that one. You know, the only other noon kick they have is Miami in week 15. That could get pushed to a late Sunday window game, Sunday afternoon. But probably a long answer for your question. I would guess the Texans schedule is pretty well set in stone right now. Be my guess. All right. Joe Q. Joe Q's got a question from last week that I didn't get to, and I'm going to get to it now. He says he's listening to my Friday bonus episode a couple weeks ago, and I said it's been 5 years since we had a rookie minicamp with the same coaching staff, which is true. He said he found himself quite angry as I detailed the timeline. There's only one person responsible for your statement, Sean, Cal McNair. He gave Bill O'Brien the keys to personnel and then fired him 4 weeks later. He hired David Culley, who was unqualified to be a head coach. He hired Jack Easterby, who was unqualified to be an NFL executive. He hired Lovie Smith, who was qualified, but who had not been interviewed, in a slapdash way because Brian Flores had sued him and others. Probably worst practice hiring sequence in a generation. And that's saying something in a league with Dan Snyder, Mark Davis, and Jim Tomsula. So my question is this, and I mean this in the true spirit of your freshman theology coursework at Notre Dame. Have you forgiven Cal McNair for his sins from 2019 through 2022? I'll finish up Joe Q's email. As I type this, I'm unaware of Cal actually repenting in any meaningful way. Has he ever said he was sorry for the mistakes that he made? You're a Texans fan. and Texans are a big part of your livelihood, Cal probably took money out of your pocket when the attention and audience for the Texans collapsed due to his profound and enduring ineptitude. Yet you seem very well disposed towards him right now. You're behaving as if you've forgiven him, but I'm not sure you think about it that way. I think you should. All right, Joe Q coming through heavy again. All right. Let's attack these one at a time. Have I forgiven Cal for his sins from 2019 through 2022? Given where we are now, yes. Yes, I've forgiven him. The hiring of D'Amico Ryans wiped out a lot of that. And in retrospect, if we have a nice long run of a decade, 10, 12 years with D'Amico Ryans and CJ Stroud and being relevant, then what we went through in 2021 and 2022 in particular, that was the most painful time to cover the team, was 2021 and 2022, because you're just off the relevance grid. The only relevant thing that whole time was Deshaun Watson and all the bullshit he was going through, that he put himself through. Call it what it is. And that was a bad time. That was not a fun time to cover this. Let me back up. It's always fun. I like what I do. I don't want to complain. Like, it's what I do is I play in the sandbox every day. But it wasn't as fun as it is covering, say, I don't know, this team right now. But I have forgiven Cal. Has he ever said he's sorry for his mistakes? I don't know that he's ever apologized. I don't know that any owner ever apologizes for mistakes. But I will say Cal and Hannah, two things. Cal and Hannah, one, have been very front-facing over the last couple of years. And it didn't just start with CJ Stroud. It started really, I think, in the Lovie Smith year, that summer. They were much more present out there, even in the midst of what was about to be a horrible season. They were out there at training camp and very present and very front-facing. The second thing I would say is that they have acknowledged mistakes that they've made by thanking fans who have stuck with them through what I think they know are some largely self-inflicted bad times. They know that. And so I think, have they said the words, "we're sorry"? I don't know. And I don't really care. Like, they've acknowledged mistakes that have been made. And most importantly, they've made amends by fixing those mistakes. So there's that. As far as my livelihood goes, I was fine during the couple of years the Texans were bad. Would it have been better? Maybe. But it didn't really impact our ratings too much. We still had really good listenership during the bad years. I mean, Seth and I had the biggest month in sports morning sports talk radio right in the middle of Texan season, the Lovie Smith season. Now, it was also the month that the Astros won the World Series. So that had a lot to do with it, obviously. So we were thankful that the Astros were good in that time because people were still listening to the genre. And I think people were still, they weren't necessarily showing up at Texan games, but I don't know that that's necessarily something that directly correlates to listening to a radio show. There's actual money involved in paying tickets to go to a game, whereas our format is free on the Odyssey app and on Sports Radio 610, by the way. So, but I appreciate you pocket watching me, Joe Q, and making sure. I know you're not pocket watching, but I was fine. My livelihood was good, and it's good now, and everything's great. Really fun question, though. Enjoyed that. And I don't know that anybody's done a bigger 180 PR-wise than Cal McNair. It's really remarkable. There should be a college thesis written about Cal McNair's 180-degree turn in PR. And I guess that's what I would say is the last thing here. He says that Joe Q says, you seem very well disposed towards Cal right now. The bottom line is Cal's a really good dude. He is a really nice person. He is a very giving person, a very generous person. I like Cal McNair. So that's why, like, if I'm disposed towards him right now, if I'm predisposed or I seem very well disposed towards him, to use your words, I like him. I like Cal McNair. Joe Q also says, okay, a few more observations here. Late bye and Christmas Day are bad in isolation, but getting them both, the worst of the impacts are offset and nullified. I agree with that. Murderers Row comes late, so it gives the Texans to wrap up the division before then. I think that's a great observation. If they go 5-1 in this unsexy division, the odds are they're going to go to the playoffs anyways. That is true. If I could choose between 5-1 in the division and going 9-8 or going 10-7, I think I would go 5-1 in the division and 9-8 because it probably means I won the division and I'm in the playoffs. 10-7, there's a chance you don't get in. Probably kind of a weird what if or either or, but my point is I think you're right. Win those division games. So you got one of the most important games right out of the chute in week 1 against Indy. All right, couple more. Daniel says, Sean, Steven Nelson. That's the whole email. Steven Nelson, go. Steven Nelson is a turd. There's just no other way to put it. Unless there's something I don't know about the way D'Amico Ryans treats people, then Steven Nelson can go pound sand, eat shit, whatever. I don't care. I just hope he's not back with the Houston Texans. And for those who missed it, Steven Nelson, right after the storms last Thursday, the tornadoes, was getting on Twitter and trying to get people from Houston sports teams to step up for those in need after the storm. And for whatever reason, decided to take a run at D'Amico Ryans. Like D'Amico Ryans has never done anything for the city of Houston or the community by posting on Instagram, let's go milk dud, man. It's your time to shine. Damn all that meathead persona. Time to get your hands dirty for the city. And we know he was talking about D'Amico because in a previous page on his Instagram story, he called him Milk Dud Ryans. He said, Milk Dud Ryans, time to show up for the city. So this guy's just, he's Steven Nelson. I don't know. I hate putting the label bad person on people. I don't know. Steven Nelson in his heart might be a good guy. And to give Steven Nelson credit, he apparently was giving out water and all sorts of things to people in need up in Atascocita after the storm. And I think that's great. Why are you taking a run at D'Amico Ryans? Why are you taking a run at the coach where you played your best football of your career under him? What has D'Amico Ryans ever said publicly about you that would even make you think to do that? Why is it that you choose to go after Texans brass each of the last 2 summers? If we recall, Steven Nelson is the same guy who went after Nick Caserio last summer by posting a picture of one of those vests that Nick wears and says that you can't trust an MFer who wears one of these, clown freak. And maybe part of it is the Texans' fault. The Texans' response to that was to give him a pay raise and make him a captain. And I know the players vote for the captain stuff. I am a little suspicious of that. I think that there's a non-zero chance that D'Amico and Nick went ahead and made Steven Nelson a captain just to shut him the hell up and keep him quiet because they needed him. Steven Nelson was a good player for them last year. I don't want to use this as a means to diminish what he did as a player, but that's a jackass thing to do, man. D'Amico might be the most popular guy in the city, and you're going after him for what? And for all you know, like he was doing things to help people. So I don't need Steven Nelson back here. Wish you the best, buddy. Sorry you're still sitting out there waiting for the offer that's never going to come. But you made a lot of money, as you pointed out to your detractors on social media. So good for you. Glad you saved it. Glad you live on a nice big farm. I'm happy for you. Just keep your coaches or keep our coach's name and the name calling out your Instagram feed. How's that, Steven Nelson? All right. That's how I feel about Steven Nelson. All right, houmailbag@gmail.com. That'll do it for this one. houmailbag@gmail.com. As we have more OTAs next week, we got minicamp the week after that, so we've still got stuff popping. We'll have a guest on this Thursday. I'm going to work on that today and tomorrow, but we'll have another episode popping on Thursday this week. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, a reminder, subscribe, rate, review. That's all I ask. 3 simple things. Subscribe, rate, review. That's me pointing at it on the YouTube. Sorry, audio listeners. But for now, we're done. So Texans, one more OTA session later this week on Thursday. I'll have an episode on Thursday, and then it's Memorial Day weekend. So appreciate everybody tuning in. Big thanks to Anthony Irwin, my producer, for getting the episode out to all you guys in a timely fashion. For now, enjoy your day. We'll see you later this week. This has been the Houtopia Football Podcast.